So as you might have seen from my last video, I had a lot of fun at GDC a few weeks back. And one of the things that stuck out to me the most was this thing called the Animation State of the Industry. And it's this survey put together by the Animation Exchange, led by Mike, that really gives you a big glimpse about exactly how the industry is at this point in time when it comes to a bunch of things, including salaries, which I would like to highlight for you guys in this video because I think it's incredibly important for you guys to have as much information as possible when it comes to salaries. So if you are talented, you can actually get paid fairly and nobody takes advantage of you as you go through this journey. So without further ado, let's get started. So for those that are new here, my name is Harvey Newman and I like to share my passion for animation here in this channel with all of you. Now, through my years in the industry, this is a little bit of a backstory. I have been, for the most part, I like to think, or at least halfway through, actually paid less than I was supposed to be paid. And I only found out how much less I was getting paid later on in my career when I knew how to negotiate contracts, how to negotiate my salary. Because there is such a thing as you being an artist and you doing this for the passion. You doing this because it's something that you really enjoy. And also, if you're anything like me, you can't quite believe that somebody is paying you to do the thing that you're passionate about and that you would do for free. So money is not really a thing. It's not something that you care about. It's not something that, you really even think about because after all, you're one of the lucky ones. You're one of the ones that made it to the industry and most of your friends want to do the job that you are doing right now. So why complain? And this was exactly the problem that I had, and I'm sure a lot of you out there can feel my pain because you're probably on the same shoes that I was back then. Now, over time, you actually start understanding that your work is worth much more than you think, and you should be asking for more money. But then a second part of the equation comes along where you don't know how to ask for money and you don't know where to start and you kind of feel bad, right? What if anything bad happens when you ask for a higher salary because you feel like you're being paid unfairly? Now, I think this is why this new initiative, or not new, it has been going on for a while, by the Animation Exchange led by Mike, actually is so important because what they do is actually they go up there and they ask a bunch of different animators about what their situation is in a bunch of different aspects, including salaries. They have a lot of numbers and then they crunch all those numbers into nice graphs. Shout out to Adam Clark for crunching these numbers and putting it all together because he has done a brilliant job. Now, there's many things that came out from this Animation Exchange document and it's a really long PDF, a really long PowerPoint presentation. So you really have to actually kind of like be curious about it to actually crunch through it. But I would like to actually kind of share some of the aspects that I actually found more interesting, including salaries, because I think that you being armed with this new information about where you should be, depending on your age, on how much you should get paid, is incredibly important. So I will link down below where you can actually look at the video, the YouTube video that Animation Exchange has put up on their channel. You should definitely check it out. There's lots of goodness if you're an animator. 100% check it out if you haven't so far. But you can see the whole video and you can see the numbers as Adam is explaining what some of those numbers meant and how he crunched the numbers together and why they are important. Now, the survey was taken by about 300 people or so. And one of the first things that I found interesting, and I have my handy remarkable here so I can actually look at the information because it's a lot of information. One of the first things that actually struck me the most as a black man in this industry, in this games industry, is that out of 300 game developers and 300 animators, actually 72.5 were white. So a high number when it comes to basically, the discrepancy of race. But I have to say that things are getting better because when I went to Animation Exchange, when I went to GDC in general, I found a bunch of black animators, way more than I have expected and way more than I've seen before, and that made me super happy. I think that having more information about race in this kind of like surveys is incredibly important. We need to level up the numbers, and over time with this kind of information, hopefully companies can actually get them and basically take a good look at their workforce and hopefully hire people of a different race into their roster, if that makes sense. Now, when it comes to salaries, all the salaries here are for full-time employees, and I was super surprised that most people are getting paid less than $40,000 a year. And this is actually from 2021, 2022, and 2023. And another thing that I've seen in pretty much every single graph, and definitely check it out for yourself, is that things don't change very much from year to year. You would think that people would get paid more as you go through the years because of inflation, but people are kind of being paid the same. And if anything, 2023 is being slightly lower overall than most years. So this is definitely something that we have to have a look at because it's not correct. And also another thing that I've seen is that when it comes to income, the income kind of like falls sharply on full-time reported income, falls sharply about 120 grand or so, $120,000 a year. So that to me means that unfortunately there's about like the 2%, 2 to 3% are basically earning more than 120 grand a year. And that is incredibly sad to me because I know a lot of experienced animators out there and not a lot of people that actually have so much knowledge to give. And animations are incredibly crucial for a game, VFX, film, but in this specific case, games. I think that having such experienced people getting paid so little is kind of sad, and I think I don't know, I feel like this industry of ours, animation in general, has always been low pay, and I think this needs to change at some point very soon, because $120,000, even though it might sound like a lot depending on where you are in the world, I do know for a fact, based on my friends, based on people that live in the US, that that is not a high salary for somebody with a lot of experience, right? Because the cost of living, depending on where you are, especially if you live around California, like LA and all that stuff, the cost of living is incredibly high. So what do you think 120 grand would get you, I don't know, if you were living here in the UK, for example, is not the same as living in the US. So I feel kind of sad that only a few people actually get that much. And then it basically tapers off highly, right? So people that actually are earning about 200 grand or more, it's just very like a percentage of the whole animation community. So I don't know. I feel like maybe, hopefully, companies can have a look at this and can start paying people fairly. Having said all that, I do think that we are venturing into this new world where people can work from anywhere and they don't have to stay in the job that they've been for the longest time if they're not happy. And that is a really good thing because that kind of puts the market in the employee's hands instead of the employer. So based on my experience, if you work on a AAA company and the company is really big and they publish the best games, they kind of knew before, they kind of knew that they had you because you wanted to be here because of, you know, the amazing things that you can put on your CV if you publish a AAA game that is like of high quality. So they kind of take that and be like, you should be thankful to work here, therefore we don't pay you as much. So what this does is basically flip things around and basically go, if you want me to work for you, pay me good money, otherwise I'm going to go and work for somewhere else, somewhere around the world, because they will pay me more money for my skills, and I think that is actually fairly compensated, right? It's not all about the money, for sure, but you do need to actually feel like you're fairly compensated. So after looking at something like this and you knowing, but based on your age, based on your experience, based on what you do, how much more or less you should be paid, you should be able to actually negotiate your contracts better. And this is what I'm trying to say with this video. Now, the last thing that I'd like to actually share with you guys, so you can actually go and hopefully drill down through this information that is absolute gold, is how much time people have to spend in the industry to actually get a salary that is respectable, right? So based on this, people that actually have less than a year experience are the ones that get paid about 40 grand a year, which is incredibly low. If you have 1 to 5, the salary doesn't actually raise by much. You only get about 60,000 a year or so. At 6 to 10 years, which I think is quite a lot, you're still below the 100 grand mark. So that is the bit that I mean, you have a lot of experience, you're actually kind of contributing a lot to a company. Obviously, they want you there because, you know, you have years of publishing games. You should have published a few games, have a few games under your belt. So I do think that that is slightly low. And then 11 to 15 years is just above 100 grand. Once again, not a big difference between the two. And I think that's actually also not so nice. And 16 to 20 years, that's when you get about, you know, 120, 140 grand. And then it keeps going after that. 25 years, it goes up to 160. But notice that, you know, when you actually are at around 25 years plus, this is your whole career in games, and you've been getting small increments of money throughout your career, which I think it feels, you know, slightly unfair given how much work and how long games take, right? I mean, we all know how profitable the games industry can be. We all know how much money there is around. So I think that passing on some of those costs, some of those profits to the game developers absolutely makes sense. I've always been a advocate for that, and I really think that should happen more and more, fingers crossed, as we actually become more experienced in this games industry, because asking somebody to spend about 3 years, 5 years of their lifetime in working in one project, in one game, incredibly hard, over time, consistently, I think requires for you to be rewarded not only with praise, but also with money. And that's basically what I wanted to share with you guys here. Definitely drill down on the information down below, and hopefully, you know, watch the whole video and see if you find it useful, because to me was an incredible eye-opener, and also made me think about what's missing from this, which I had a conversation at length with the folks that made this, put this together. And I do think that this is incredibly powerful information for all animators out there, because it really puts in perspective what kind of things you should have, right? As important as it is for you to actually get information about how to be the best animator, you should also arm yourself with information on how much should I be expecting in terms of salary when I make it to animation, or if you're a junior animator, how much should I be getting when I am a mid-level animator, a senior animator, a lead animator. Those things are incredibly important, so you know where to aim and you know what to negotiate when you get to that point, right? That's all I had for you guys. Thanks a lot for my patrons for supporting me every single month. Consider supporting me on my Patreon if you haven't so far. And as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of the week. Speak to you guys next week. And until then, stay well, stay safe. Peace.